Mommy, what happened to your face?
It's just a little bruise, sweetie.
Does it hurt?
Not anymore. Come here.
The morning Lily asked me why I was wearing my uniform at 6 a.m., I told her I was just getting an early start. She tilted her head, the way 6-year-olds do when they know something doesn't add up, and pressed her tiny finger against the purple shadow beneath my eye. Mommy, she said. Did the stairs hurt you again? I smiled. I always smiled. The stairs and I just don't get along, baby girl. She accepted that. Children accept so many things they shouldn't have to. But across the street, in the restaurant where I'd worked for 3 years, a man named Derek Holt was watching my building's entrance through the floor-to-ceiling window of the private dining room he had reserved every single morning. Just for that view. Just to watch me leave. And 2 booths away from him that morning, drinking black coffee and reading a folded newspaper, old-fashioned, like everything about him, was a man named Marcus Vane. A man I had never spoken to. A man who, I would later learn, had already noticed everything. My name is Claire Merritt, and I want you to understand who I was before all of this happened. I was not a victim. I need you to know that first. I was a 34-year-old woman who got up at 5:45 every morning, packed a backpack with crayons and a sketch pad for my daughter, walked 6 blocks to Aldora's, a mid-range restaurant that served overpriced eggs and genuinely excellent coffee, and clocked in by 6:30. I was good at my job. Fast, precise, warm without being fake. The regulars liked me. The kitchen liked me. I made decent tips for a place that wasn't upscale, and I had a plan. The plan was simple: save enough to take the online nursing program. 2 years. I had the acceptance letter printed and folded in my drawer. 18 months of savings left to go. Lily was the reason for the plan. Lily was the reason for everything. She had her father's dark curls, but nothing else of him, not his temper, not his coldness, not his particular talent for making you feel like everything wrong in the world was somehow your fault. She was 6 years old and she laughed at her own drawings before she finished them, and she believed wholeheartedly that dogs could understand English if you spoke slowly enough. On the mornings I couldn't find childcare, I brought her to Aldora's with me. Mr. Petrov, the owner, pretended to be annoyed and then secretly gave her hot chocolate. She sat in the back corner booth with her sketch pad, drawing animals with remarkably specific expressions, and she never once complained. This was one of those mornings. It was a Thursday in October. The restaurant had that particular autumn light, golden, slanted, the kind that makes everything look warmer than it is. I carried 2 plates of French toast to table 7, recited the specials to a couple near the window, and passed through the swinging kitchen door to grab more coffee. That's when Sandra, the other morning waitress, pulled me aside near the espresso machine. Her voice was low. "Claire. He's here." I didn't need to ask who. I set down the coffee carafe very carefully. "Which table?" "Private dining." "But he's already asked the host if you're on today." I felt the familiar cold settle into my stomach. The one I'd learned to function inside of, the way you learn to function in a drafty house, you just wear more layers. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay out front." "Sandra, can you cover private dining today?" "Of course." She squeezed my arm. She was 62, had worked this floor for 9 years, and she understood things without being told. "You're not alone up there, honey." I smiled. Tightened my ponytail. Walked back out. Table 7 needed refills. The couple near the window wanted separate checks. A businessman in the corner booth was waving for the 3rd time. And in the back corner, Lily was drawing a cat with enormous, worried eyebrows, fully absorbed. I breathed. For 20 minutes, it was just a Thursday. Then the private dining door opened. Derek Holt walked onto the main floor. He was not a large man. That was always the first thing people failed to understand about him. He was average height, average build, with sandy blonde hair that he kept too carefully and a smile that worked on strangers. He had worked on me once, for 3 years. Then I had Lily, and something in me recalibrated. You look at a person differently once you have a child to protect. You start seeing them clearly. I had left. Gotten the restraining order. Violated the restraining order when he showed up at my sister's house, and I was too afraid to call the police because the last time I called the police, he had been standing next to the officer at the end of the night smiling, and somehow I ended up with a warning about making false reports. He had connections. That was his power. Not his fists, though those too. His connections. He walked into the main dining room like he owned it, which was the way he walked everywhere. He spotted me immediately, and the smile that crossed his face was the kind that never reached the eyes. "Claire," he said pleasantly. "Fancy that." I kept walking. Head down. Plates to deliver. "I just want to talk," he said, falling into step beside me. 5 minutes. "I'm working," I said. Quiet. Professional. I saw Lily on the way in. His voice dropped half a note, enough that no one else would catch the edge in it. "She's getting so big." I stopped walking. It was a mistake. I knew it was a mistake the moment I did it. You don't stop. You never stop. Because stopping means engaging, and engaging means giving him the stage he came here to find. But he'd said her name. He'd said her name and nodded toward the corner where she was sitting, and every maternal circuit I had fired at once. "Don't," I said. "Don't what?" "I'm just admiring my daughter." "She is not." "Let's not do this here, Claire." His voice was smooth now, concerned sounding. "A performance. People are watching. You know how you get." "How I get?" He had been saying that for years. How you get. The implication always the same, that my reactions were the problem. That his behavior was simply weather, and I was the one who refused to carry an umbrella. I set the plates down at the nearest table with an apology to the confused couple sitting there and turned to face him fully. "I need you to leave," I said. 2 booths away, I noticed something without fully registering it. A man folded his newspaper. Derek did not leave. Derek never left when asked. That was the architecture of his control, the simple, immovable fact that requests meant nothing to him. Requests were for people who acknowledged that other people had rights. He stepped closer. Not touching me, he was too clever for that in public, too aware of witnesses, but close enough that I could smell the expensive cologne he wore to mask what I'd eventually understood was a fundamental rottenness underneath. "You're making a scene," he said quietly. Still smiling for the room. "I'm standing still," I said. "You're shaking." I was. I hated that I was, and I hated that he could see it, and I hated most of all that he was right, because shaking looked like instability, and he knew exactly how to use that. "I have a restraining order," I said. Quiet enough that only he could hear. He almost laughed. "Claire. We share a child. The family court judge agreed it needed to be modified. You got the papers last week." I had gotten the papers. My lawyer had called it a temporary adjustment pending a hearing. Derek called it a victory. "That doesn't mean you can come to my workplace. You work in a public restaurant." He spread his hands. Reasonable man. Confused by my reaction. "I came in for breakfast, same as anyone. Am I not allowed to eat breakfast?" The couple at the nearest table was very interested in their French toast. Sandra appeared in my peripheral vision and stopped dead, reading the situation. "Sir," she said carefully, "can I show you back to private dining?" "I'm fine, thank you." He didn't look at her. "Sandra," I said, "can you check on Lily for me?" Sandra moved immediately. Which meant Derek moved too, casually, unhurried, the way he did everything, stepping just slightly to angle himself between me and the corner booth. "She's fine," he said. "Stop being dramatic. Move. You know, this is exactly what your therapist warned you about. This catastrophizing. This. I don't have a therapist." "Well, maybe you should." He tilted his head, and for just a moment the mask slipped, just slightly, just enough that I saw what lived underneath it. "You look terrible, by the way. Are you sleeping? Because I hear the apartment on Grover Street isn't exactly quiet at night. My blood went cold. He was telling me he knew where I lived. The new apartment. The one I hadn't given him. The one I'd moved to 3 months ago. He knew. He had always known. He watched me understand that, and he smiled with his whole face. I just worry about you, he said warmly. And about Lily living in that kind of environment. I've been speaking with my attorney about primary custody, actually. Just exploring options. The room tilted. He had been waiting to say that. He'd built the whole conversation to that sentence. Every word a setup, every moment a calculated step toward that. You should think carefully, he said, about how cooperative you want to be. And then he reached out, unhurried, gentle-seeming, and touched my arm. Not a grab. Not quite. More of a claim. The way you rest your hand on something you own. Don't touch me, I said. Claire. Take your hand off her. The voice was quiet. Not loud. Not aggressive. Not the voice of someone performing for an audience. It was the voice of someone who required precisely one sentence. Both Derek and I turned. The man with the newspaper was standing up. He wasn't what I expected. He was perhaps 60, maybe a lean 65, with silver hair cut close and a suit that had not come off any rack I'd ever seen. He was tall, not dramatically so, but the kind of tall that comes with a certain quality of stillness, the way trees are tall. He had a face that had seen considerable weather and arrived at calm. He was looking at Derek the way you might look at a spill you're deciding whether to clean up yourself or wait for someone else. Derek let go of my arm. I'm sorry? Derek said. Already recalibrating. Performing confusion. I won't repeat myself, the man said simply. He didn't move toward us. He just stood. And something in the room changed, the way pressure changes before weather. Derek's smile returned, slower this time. Reassessing. This is a private conversation, friend. No, the man said. It isn't. His name was Marcus Vane. I didn't know that yet. At that moment he was just a stranger in an expensive suit who had decided to stand up, and I didn't fully know what to do with that, because in my experience, strangers didn't stand up. Not in restaurants. Not when it was complicated. Not when the man causing the problem was calm and smiling and dressed nicely and could very credibly make you look like the problem. But Marcus Vane didn't seem concerned with any of that. He slid out from the booth without haste, buttoned the middle button of his jacket, once, precise, and walked toward us. I noticed then that he had taken off his watch. It was a small detail, and it made no sense to me at the time. He folded it into his breast pocket with the deliberateness of a man performing a ritual. I learned later what it meant. Expensive watches get damaged in physical altercations. A man who removes his watch in a tense situation is a man who is making space for the possibility. He stopped approximately 4 feet from Derek. He looked at Derek the way people almost never look at Derek, calmly, without performance, without the slight deference that Derek had learned to extract from most people simply through the confidence of his presence. She asked you not to touch her, Marcus said. And I heard her, Derek said smoothly. We're having a private conversation. Our daughter is in the corner. I think that's probably none of your daughter. Marcus let the words settle. He hadn't raised his voice once. The little girl who just watched you grab her mother's arm. Derek flushed. Just slightly. I didn't grab. Table 9, Marcus said, without looking away from Derek. Did you see this man grab this woman's arm? The couple at table 9 looked up. The woman, mid-40s, reading glasses, a teacher's haircut, said clearly, yes. Yes, I did. Marcus nodded once, as if this confirmed something already understood. He turned back to Derek. I have a habit, he said quietly, of recording my own table when I eat alone. Something I started doing after a business dispute some years ago. I find it useful. He paused. You'd be surprised what you capture. Derek stared at him. Something had happened in Derek's face that I had never seen before. The smile was still there, technically. But behind the smile, something was recalculating frantically. I don't know who you are, Derek said. No, Marcus said. You don't. The silence between them lasted 4 seconds. I counted. Then Derek straightened his jacket, looked at me with an expression that promised this conversation was not finished, and walked back toward the private dining room. He didn't run. He had too much ego to run. But he left. Marcus Vane turned to me. He had gray eyes. Very steady, very quiet. Are you all right? He asked. And I, who had not cried in front of anyone in 2 years, felt my throat close completely. I'm fine, I managed. Thank you. He nodded. He didn't push. He didn't ask questions or make himself the center of what had just happened. He simply said, I'll finish my coffee, if you don't need anything else, and returned to his booth. I stood there for a moment. Then I went to check on Lily. She had drawn a cat standing very upright with its tail raised like a flag. I gave him a confident tail, she explained, not looking up. Because he was scared, but he didn't want anyone to know. I sat down beside her and held her very tightly for a long moment and told her I loved her. I know, Mama, she said, patting my back. I know. 20 minutes passed. The restaurant settled. The couple at table 9 paid and left, the woman squeezing my shoulder as she went. Sandra managed the floor with the calm efficiency of someone who has seen human drama in all its forms and remains unimpressed by it. I refilled Marcus Vane's coffee. He looked up and said, Thank you. No, I said. Thank you. What you did back there was the minimum, he said simply. I paused. He wasn't being modest. He was being precise. He said things to you, Marcus said. About your daughter. About where you live. I felt my shoulders come up. You heard that? Sound carries in rooms like this. He turned his coffee cup slightly. He knows your address. Yes. How long? I'm not sure. I moved 3 months ago. He has someone watching you, Marcus said. Not speculating. Stating. Or access to someone who can find addresses. That's not a coincidence. I looked at him properly for the first time. There was something about the way he spoke that was unlike civilian speech. Not military, I'd known military men, and they had a different quality. This was something else. The economy of it. The absence of wasted words. The sense that every sentence had been considered before being released. Can I ask what you do? I said. Something moved in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or something quieter than amusement. I'm retired, he said. From? A pause. Risk management, he said. I would think about that answer for many days. He came back the next morning. And the morning after that. He always sat in the same booth, the corner one with the sightline to the door, and he always ordered black coffee and whatever the kitchen had prepared well that day, which he seemed to know without asking. He read. He did not bother me. But I noticed, over those first days, that he was watching. Not in the way Derek watched. Derek's watching was possessive, a claim made through eyes. Marcus watched the way security cameras watch. Comprehensive. Impersonal. Cataloging. He noted every time the private dining door opened. He noted when Derek's car, a black Audi, always the same spot, was parked across the street. He noted the staff rotation, the shift changes, the hours I brought Lily in. I didn't say anything about this for 4 days. On the 5th day, when I came to refill his coffee, he said without preamble, he's been outside every morning this week. Different parking spots, but the same car. I set the carafe down. I know, I said. You should document it. I have a lawyer. She says documentation matters. Your lawyer is right. He considered. Do you have photos? Some. Get more. Times, dates, plate confirmation. If he's violating any restraining order provision, even the modified one, it matters. I looked at him. Why are you helping me? He was quiet for a moment in a particular way that suggested the question deserved more than a reflex answer. Because no one helped my daughter, he said finally. The sentence was simple. It contained a world. He opened his newspaper and I understood the conversation was finished. I walked back to the service station, and I picked up my phone, and I started photographing Derek's car. 8 days after the restaurant confrontation, I came home to find an envelope under my apartment door. Inside was a printed photograph. Me, walking Lily to school. Taken from behind, close enough to have been taken by someone walking steps away. No note. No name. Just the photograph. I sat on my kitchen floor with Lily asleep in the next room and held the photograph and tried to keep breathing, which was harder than it usually was. I texted my lawyer. She said call the police. I called the police. The officer who came was young and professional and wrote everything down carefully and explained that a photograph wasn't yet threatening in a legally actionable way and that I should document everything and contact them if I felt in immediate danger. I thanked him. I locked the door. I didn't sleep. At 6:30 the next morning, I was at Eldora's. Marcus was already there. He looked up when I came in, and something in my face must have been legible, because he said immediately, sit down for a moment. I'm on the clock. Sandra can cover 2 minutes. Sit down. I sat. I told him about the photograph. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. This is escalation, he said. Not intimidation. He's past intimidation. He wants you to know the intimidation is escalating. What does that mean? It means he has a goal. The custody hearing? 4 weeks. He's building pressure. He wants you destabilized before the hearing. Reactive. Erratic on the stand. He turned his coffee cup. He wants you afraid enough to make a mistake. I am afraid, I said. That's allowed, Marcus said. Afraid is fine. Afraid and functional is what matters. I looked at him. How do you know all this? I've spent considerable time around men like him, Marcus said. And I've spent considerable time stopping men like him. He reached into his inside jacket pocket and placed a business card on the table. It was plain. White card, black ink. A name, M. Vane, and a phone number. No company. No title. If anything else happens, he said, call that number. Any hour. I picked up the card. It was heavy stock, the expensive kind. What are you? I asked. Not rudely. Genuinely. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Someone with resources, he said. And a reason to use them. The reason arrived 3 days later in the form of Derek's lawyer. He appeared at the restaurant at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, not Derek himself, but a man in a gray suit with a leather briefcase who asked for me by name at the host stand and identified himself as representing Derek Holt in the upcoming family court matter. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a motion for emergency custody transfer. The basis of the motion was a written statement claiming that I had been observed behaving erratically, that I had been seen drinking heavily in public, and that multiple witnesses were prepared to testify to concerning behavior. None of it was true. Every word of it was the kind of thing that is very difficult to disprove, because it describes absences of good behavior, of good judgment, and you cannot photograph the absence of a thing. My hands were shaking when I called my lawyer from the alley behind the restaurant. She told me to breathe. She said motions like this were often designed to pressure rather than succeed. She said we would fight it. I stood in the cold alley and breathed and felt the very specific despair of being a person who is telling the truth and knowing that the truth is not always enough. Then I called the number on the plain white card. Marcus picked up on the second ring. "Tell me everything," he said. He picked me and Lily up from the restaurant at 3 p.m. that afternoon. It was the first time I'd been in a car with him. It was a dark sedan, not flashy, not a statement, just an extraordinarily well-maintained car driven by a man who navigated traffic with calm competence. Lily sat in the back with her sketchpad and drew Marcus with enormous eyebrows without being asked, which was simply her process with new people. "He has kind eyebrows," she said, showing me. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror at the drawing and said, "That's the first time anyone has drawn me kind eyebrows." "I only draw what I see," Lily said seriously. He drove to an office above a dry cleaning business on 4th Street, nondescript, intentionally forgettable. Inside were two men who nodded to Marcus and left immediately, and a room with a long table and several monitors and the particular smell of a space where serious work happened quietly. Marcus introduced me to a woman named Vera, late 40s, short silver hair, the rapid precise movements of someone who lives inside information. "She's my researcher," Marcus said. "And the most dangerous person I know." "He says that to everyone," Vera said, sitting down at a keyboard without ceremony. "It just happens to also be true." While Lily drew quietly in the corner, Vera began pulling apart Derek Holt's life with the focused efficiency of a surgeon. Financial records. Court filings. Property searches. Social associations. And then, 40 minutes in, Vera said, "There we go." Marcus moved to the monitor. I moved beside him. On the screen was a list of names. And beside one of them, a name I recognized as belonging to one of the officers who had responded to my first call, 2 years ago, was a series of financial transactions. "Derek Holt has been paying a police consultant," Vera said. "Monthly, for the past 2 years. Framed as security consulting. But this person's name is on your original incident report. The one where you were warned about false reports." The room was very quiet. "He paid someone to make that happen," I said. "Yes," Vera said. I sat down. I had known, in the formless way you know things you can't prove, that something had been wrong that night. That the outcome had been engineered. But knowing it and seeing it on a screen with transaction amounts and dates were two entirely different experiences. "Why?" I said. "Why would he go to all this trouble? Why not just, let me go?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. He sat down across from me, and he was looking at me with those steady gray eyes, and he said, "Men like Derek don't let things go. They don't think of you as a person who left. They think of you as an object that escaped. And objects that escape are a problem to be solved." He paused. "My daughter left a man like him 8 years ago," he said. "I didn't know. She didn't tell me until it had gone on for 2 years. She was protecting me from knowing, can you imagine that? Protecting me." His jaw shifted. "She's all right now. She's more than all right. But there was a period where she wasn't, and I wasn't there, and I think about that." The room was very still. "I sit in that restaurant every morning," he said, "because I know the owner, and because it is quiet, and because I am a man with a habit of routine. But when I saw you," he paused, "precisely, the way he did everything, I recognized something. And I decided I wasn't going to look away again." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "What do we do now?" And Marcus Vane, the man I would later learn had spent 20 years working at the intersection of private security and law, who had once, I would eventually discover, been known by a different kind of name in circles that operated in the spaces between official structures, looked at me with something that was not quite a smile but was warmer than what I'd seen from him before. "Now," he said, "we build a case." The hearing was in 26 days. In those 26 days, Marcus and Vera built something that I can only describe as architecture. Evidence doesn't feel like power when you're in the middle of gathering it. It feels like drowning slowly in paperwork. Vera pulled financial records that linked Derek to the paying off of witnesses. I documented 17 separate instances of his car outside my building. My lawyer filed a countermotion for contempt. A woman named Patricia, who turned out to be a former colleague of Derek's from 3 years ago, came forward voluntarily after Vera made contact, and she had her own photographs, her own dates, her own specific memories. And then there were the security cameras. Aldora's had 3. One at the entrance, one above the service bar, one covering the main dining room. Mr. Petrov, the owner, was a quiet Ukrainian man in his 60s who had watched Derek Holt come and go from his restaurant for months and said nothing because he had not understood what he was watching. When Marcus sat down with him and explained, he went immediately to the storage room where the camera system was kept and pulled 11 weeks of footage without hesitation. In that footage, Derek, 3 different mornings, standing outside after leaving the restaurant, pausing at the window, photographing the back corner booth where Lily sat. Derek, in the private dining room, making a phone call on a date that corresponded exactly with the day the envelope appeared under my door. Derek, on the morning of our confrontation, touching my arm, clearly, unambiguously, in direct violation of the modified restraining order which still prohibited physical contact. This alone, Marcus said, pointing to the last clip, is a contempt charge. My lawyer watched the footage and said, with the contained excitement of a professional trying to remain professional, "This is extraordinary." The night before the hearing, Derek called me. I let it go to voicemail. His message was calm. Warm even. He said he hoped we could resolve things amicably. He said he was sure the judge would make the right decision. He said that children needed stability, and he hoped I could provide it. Then, at the very end, so quiet I had to replay it, he said, "It'd be a shame if this got messier than it needs to be." I saved the voicemail. I texted it to Marcus. He replied with one word, "Good." The morning of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse at 8:15. Derek was already there, outside on the steps, talking to his attorney in the practiced way of a man who is performing confidence. He saw me. He smiled. Then he saw Marcus Vane come through the courthouse door behind me, and the smile became something else. "Who is he?" he said to his attorney, loudly enough for me to hear. His attorney, who was presumably good at his job, because he read rooms, looked at Marcus, and looked at his client, and said nothing. In the courtroom, it took 4 hours. My lawyer presented the security footage. The financial transactions. Patricia's testimony. My 17 documented instances. The voicemail. Derek's attorney objected to the financial records. The judge overruled. Derek's attorney objected to the voicemail on grounds of relevance. The judge listened to it twice and then overruled that too. The witnesses, prepared to testify to my erratic behavior, there were 2 of them, were confronted with evidence that both had received payments from a third-party account linked to Derek's business. One of them looked at the papers my lawyer slid across the table and asked to speak to an attorney before testifying. The other one said, quietly, that she'd like to reconsider her statement. Derek sat very still. I had watched him for years, and I knew all his faces. The charming one. The wounded one. The reasonable one. The frightening one. I had never seen this face before. This was a man who had operated for years inside a system he believed he had paid for and befriended and bent to his shape, and who was watching that system not bend. The judge, a small, precise woman in her late 50s who had clearly seen every possible human performance of victimhood and grievance, looked at Derek over her glasses for a long moment before she began speaking. She said the word contempt twice. She said the phrase pattern of harassment 4 times. She said that the motion for emergency custody was denied and dismissed. And then she said that she was referring the financial payment matter to the district attorney's office. Derek stood up. His attorney put a hand on his arm. Derek looked at me across the courtroom, and I held his gaze. For the first time in years, I held it, and I did not look away. He was the one who looked away. Outside the courthouse, in the cold October air, I stood on the steps and couldn't quite locate gravity. My lawyer was talking. Good things, she was saying good things. Important things about next steps and follow-up filings and how the DA referral might proceed. I heard her and could not quite feel the ground. And then Marcus was beside me. He didn't say anything for a moment. He simply stood there, which was something I had come to understand was one of the most powerful things he could offer, his presence, unhurried, requiring nothing. "It's not over," he said eventually. "The DA process will take time. He has money. He'll hire lawyers." "I know," I said. "But today was real. What happened in there was real." I nodded. My throat was doing things I was trying to prevent. "He looked away," I said. "Yes," Marcus said. "He did." 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning when neither of us had anywhere to be, I brought Lily to Aldora's for breakfast. We sat in the corner booth, her booth, the one that had become hers over countless mornings of drawing and hot chocolate, and she ordered pancakes with strawberries and I ordered coffee and we just sat in the warm autumn light and it was quiet in the particular way that quiet feels like something you've earned. Marcus came in at his usual time. He spotted us. He paused. Then he came to the booth and said, "May I?" "Obviously," Lily said, sliding over without looking up from her sketchpad. He sat. He ordered coffee and the eggs, and for a while we all just existed in the same space comfortably, which was something I hadn't been able to do with another person in longer than I could accurately measure. "I want to show you something," Lily said, turning her sketchpad. She had drawn the three of us. Me, with my ponytail and my apron. Herself, with her curls and her characteristic expression of deep focus. And Marcus as tall, silver-haired, with the kind eyebrows she always gave him, standing slightly in front of us. Not blocking us. Not owning us. Just there. "He's in front because he's watching the door," Lily explained seriously. "But he keeps looking back to make sure we're okay." I looked at the drawing. I looked at Marcus. He was looking at the drawing with an expression I had not seen on his face before, open and quiet, and something that in another man might have been called moved. "Can I keep this?" he asked Lily. She considered him with the gravity of an artist protecting her work. Then she nodded once. "You can have it. But you have to actually put it somewhere. Not just in a drawer." "I'll put it on my desk," he said. "Good," she said, and returned to drawing. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. Outside, the street was ordinary and golden and full of people going about their Thursday as if nothing had happened, which was true for them. For me it was different. For me the street looked like a place I was allowed to be, which is a thing you stop noticing until someone takes it from you and then, slowly, it gets given back. "I pulled the nursing program information," Marcus said, very casually. I turned to look at him. "Your application is still valid. The January cohort still has slots." He turned his coffee cup in that particular way of his. "The tuition is not insurmountable. I can't. I'm not offering to pay it," he said. "I'm offering to lend it, at 0 interest, until you're working. Which you will be." I opened my mouth. "It's not charity," he said, before I could speak. "It's an investment in the accurate direction of things." I looked at him for a long time. "Why?" I finally said. He looked out the window at the ordinary Golden Street. "Because," he said, "I should have been there 8 years ago for someone, and I wasn't. And I have decided that is no longer an acceptable pattern." He said it simply. Like a fact he had verified and filed. I felt tears arrive in my eyes for the second time in this man's company, which made twice in 2 years, which felt like something significant. "I'm going to be embarrassingly grateful," I warned him. "I'll survive it," he said, and for the first time, genuinely, fully, he smiled. It was a real smile. Slightly lopsided, slightly surprised at itself. Lily looked up from her drawing, looked at him, looked at me, and said with great satisfaction, "I knew it." "Knew what?" I said. "That he had a good smile hiding in there." She nodded at her new drawing, Marcus, smiling, with his kind eyebrows. I was just waiting for it. The morning light came through the window and fell across the table where the three of us sat, and the coffee was warm, and outside the city went about its ordinary business, and I made a quiet promise to myself and to my daughter and to the direction of things. I would not waste this. I would not go back. I would build something worth standing in front of. And somewhere across town, a man in an expensive suit was sitting in an attorney's office going through the particular experience of his carefully constructed world beginning to come apart, slowly, legally, irrevocably, one document at a time. And I was not afraid of him anymore. I was not afraid of him anymore.